I think we've still got a couple more folks we're waiting on.
No.
Just one. There's Mike. Okay, I didn't see Michael. Okay, well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Oh, my video's off.
I did. It was me.
There we go. Good morning. Good morning. How's everyone doing?
We're tired.
Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
We had a late board meeting last night, Stephanie.
Hopefully it was a productive and good one.
I think so.
Good. So it was either Rachel or Lindsay that typed up what a draft or sort of what we would be covering in today's meeting. I know we've got a much shorter meeting than normal, and it's probably going to feel like that because you guys have had really full, robust IBB days. So I've got that we're going till noon today, and I've got that you all did capture the things you've got to cover. I've got them handwritten, but if someone can share with the group, and then we can talk about, any homework, any follow-up, any wrap-up, and then jump into today's agenda if that's okay. Yeah. I can tell you what I've got. But Rachel, was it you that had saved a document on a draft agenda for today?
I don't know who did it, but it's labeled July 23rd agenda, and it's got 4 things on there.
And our first one is discussion of the calendar.
Okay, I've got that. What do you guys have for number 2?
We've got negotiations process, and then intro to grievance issue, and then COVID.
Yeah, I've got standing COVID. Okay.
I would like to have calendar and COVID discussed first, and then see if we end up having time for the other 2. I also thought maybe, I don't know if we discussed this last time, but if we wanted to kind of finalize our, red line our negotiated agreement, or if those 2 issues you were wanting to discuss prior to doing that, prior to putting forth something to the bargaining unit to ratify. So
We sort of discussed the timeline for ratification. I think that it would be really helpful if we were able to go through as a team our red line draft, delete, meaning accept and acknowledge any of the comments that are in there, so that we just have a clean red line only version, to potentially then take to the board for approval at our July 27th meeting. And then following that, ratification by NEA. I think we're ready to do that. I think because we have already discussed our schedule and we're going to have ongoing meetings, we can, continue to discuss the things that we did not get to at those meetings.
Sounds good.
yeah.
Okay. So then it's sounding as though we could do calendar and COVID update, and then you're saying go ahead and go into the red line, and then it would be PD days would carry into future discussions, grievance procedure carry into future discussions, but would negotiation process, future collaboration carry into perhaps next meeting?
I think we should just see where we are once we get through those first 3 things, and if people have time and want to spend time on the process, then we do. We'll just see if we're at a stopping point, or if we want to, get
Okay.
into that topic.
And then last thing to clarify, I do believe I sent my notes on priority standards, which was something that was going to be an ongoing sort of look-see for you guys, based on information that a few people, mainly Michelle, Lindsay, I think, were gathering, and even Jill. So that's also going into future meetings, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Okay. So then, guys, do you want to jump into calendar, or you want to hear a COVID update? Just kick off wherever you want to start between those 2 things. If Michelle's ready, or
why don't we start with the calendar?
So we need to share it with,
Michelle's got copies.
okay.
So, update for the team. Obviously, this is something that had to be worked on extremely quickly. It was important to us to get the team's input. And so as soon as we developed a draft in anticipation of the executive order being approved by the state board, that was something that we shared out with Jill and Linda, who then provided feedback on the calendar and shared some interests that our professional employees would have in the calendar. And what you have before you is work that we did following that input and feedback to try as best we could to address those interests that Jill identified. And Michelle, if you could, I'm going to have you explain the revisions that you worked with Darren to make from the initial draft that we sent Jill and Linda.
Are you guys good if Darren comes in?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Dr. Dennis, can you come down? He's watching.
He's listening.
No,
She doesn't have like a secret.
Tested on IBB.
30-second delay, so it's gonna take a little bit.
I really, if someone could play the Price is Right music right now, that would just be amazing.
I'm going to start talking through them because I know he'll be right down because he walks really fast. If you guys don't know Dr. Dennis, he can be here
He
in
wears
just
his
a second.
tennies.
Can he roll in on us?
So,
He comes in on his segue and my day is made.
So this was even new and wasn't necessarily something, Jill, that you suggested, but it definitely was in the spirit of something you suggested because the governor's order was not supported by the Kansas State Board of Education. We moved the kids' start back date to September 8th in this particular version, so that's just one more day. We were looking for one more day anytime we could. We also moved back the teacher start date by 2 days. So we put 3, we front-loaded 3 to take them off of the end. We did not remove 2 PD days during the school year because we just processed thinking that if we, have to flip between models and go from hybrid to remote, that teachers are really going to need that professional learning time throughout the year to adjust instruction. And as with anything that we do or teach the first time, we should be reflecting on that and going back with our teams and saying what's working, what's not working. I mean, something might be working really well for Jay that I could spend some time collaborating with him. So we just didn't feel like we could we don't have very many professional learning days as it is. We've all established that as a concern. And so we felt like we really needed to leave those days in there. I believe we corrected the typo issues that you had established, and thank you for that so much. We had a lot of discussion about adding minutes to the student day. And I don't know if you all watched the board meeting last night, but there was also a lot of discussion with the board and with team members about the concern, especially in a remote learning environment, what that might look like. It's going to be hard enough to log 390 and to have to spend additional time on Zoom and additional time of logging minutes. We just didn't think it was good for student learning. I mean, at the end of the day, we just didn't think it was good for student learning. Additionally, for buildings that are in person, the ability to add that time and still have adequate supervision was a huge concern because we wouldn't be adding time to teachers' day. It would just be the student day, and then we would not, how are we going to get all the buses loaded at an elementary school and still have supervision for that was a huge concern, especially with the 7-hour and 40-minute day. And so we did not add student minutes to the day. Did I address all of them?
Yeah.
Stephanie, are you still with us? Okay, you were locked. It was the screen. I just made me giggle because you were locked in a funny way.
Now we can't hear you.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I'm muted too. I said I know, and I was saying it wasn't a very flattering block view. I'm still here. I'm just muted.
They never
Okay.
are when you freeze, I feel like.
Right.
And I have Darren here too, because Darren really is Darren does all of the work behind the scenes, and is our minute calculator, and then we have several people checking the accuracy of the minutes, and it's kind of a daunting job when you start moving things around. And so this is where we are. With the student last day would be June 11th, and teacher last day would be the 15th, which would be that facilitated, the 14th being a work day, keeping in mind the 4 snow days are built into that. And so we would hope that we could do remote snow days should that become an so I think, you could maybe, we might get to June 4th somehow, some way if we had no issues. Is that accurate? I don't want to overstate that.
That's correct.
How do you count the hours? Is it like each student day is 7 hours?
So that was a good question.
Okay.
So 390 minutes is what we count
Okay.
for a student day. You can't, there's lots of rules around counting. You can't count the passing period before and after lunch. There's some things you can count and something you cannot, but it's 390 a day, and then professional learning counts as half.
Conferences count as full days.
Okay, so professional development counts as half of 390?
So you take, a teacher works 740, right? An
Okay.
elementary teacher would work 740. You take out a 30-minute duty-free lunch, and then you cut that in half.
Okay. And you said parent-teacher conferences count as a full?
They do. They count as full
Okay.
student minute.
So do you have a total, so you guys do the full total minutes, and then you, I'm assuming divide that by 60 to see if you're at the 1,000?
We convert it into hours, yes.
Yeah. Can I ask what you're at right now?
It varies. Every grade level is a little bit different because seniors obviously get out a little bit early. 7th grade and 9th grade, or 7th, 8th, and 8th, 10th, and 11th don't start the same day. So there are a variety of reasons why they're different. But we are at around 1146.
Okay.
Overall, seniors are at 1089.
And what do they need?
They need 1086.
1086. It's tight. Seniors are really, really tight.
All right.
Now, we can add days to seniors if we had to. So that's fixable if we needed to have them go a day or two longer.
I know one of the things that screams at me is spring break. Just from spring break to the end of the year is a long haul, and I'm wondering if it would be beneficial. I know I hate saying move spring break, but if we're looking at like almost, what's that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-ish weeks without a break at the end of the school year is...
Well, I almost wondered if it could be like Thanksgiving break in a sense where that April 2nd and April 9th, if those could be like incorporated into the spring break, which is a teacher work day and a parent-teacher conference, and like maybe move spring break 2 weeks later. Making it so it's like the end of third quarter, I guess, but.
The 9th, the reason the 9th is where it is that's where third quarter ends, and for a
Right.
contract, we need to work.
Right, and so I was thinking if we move spring break 2 weeks later, and then that's the end of third quarter, and having the teacher work day as like the Tuesday of spring break, and the parent-teacher conference flex day as the Monday, so kind of like what you do with Thanksgiving break, where 2 of those days are actually, counted, yeah.
I think you'd
Anyway.
have to move it 3 weeks, otherwise you'd still have another week left in third quarter. One of the concerns that came back from the feedback was the quarters weren't even.
Right. Yeah, I was counting that if we moved it 2 weeks down, third quarter would still have like, I think 42 days.
We had a lot of discussion around moving spring break, and there was a pretty strong feeling that we would have parents really upset about the moving of spring break. I don't know that to be factual. I think that was just the feeling that, there were already weddings planned potentially, there were already trips planned potentially.
Yeah, I was just thinking about how to like incorporate some of the other days into that spring break so that we could,
Because we didn't have
Push it
any,
back.
we had less days with just no kid contact at all to help with minutes.
but Jay brings up a good point. I mean, that's a long, I mean, kind of, could be almost 3 months. I mean, we've got like those 2 Fridays, but, and I guess a Memorial Day in there too. 3 months of, solid
Do we, what's the
school.
history in Shawnee Mission in terms of the scheduling of spring break?
We typically try to align it with our peers.
Right.
I have Blue Valleys, I think they reduced
Blue
theirs.
Valleys is the 18th and the 19th.
And the 23rd.
Well,
Not for
Oh.
teachers, but, or 22nd
okay.
for kids. The 22nd's like a.
So they have an
professional
extended weekend for spring break this year.
And I haven't seen one for Olathe yet. We also talked about that, and we talked about that we didn't think we really didn't want to recommend not having a spring break.
Oh, yeah.
Is it always like dead center of March? Is
It's
it like,
usually
I
like
mean,
It's always
third.
into the third quarter.
into the third quarter? I mean, obviously, we're dealing with sort of a unprecedented year. I'm just,
Yeah.
trying without having any data to rely on to think about where our community might be, and I guess that's anyone's guess right now.
That is also something we would have to negotiate because our calendar states that we will have a full spring break.
Right.
And I think that's one of those things of like this year, knowing that it's crazy, if we can stretch and get a couple extra days put into a place that, ultimately, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you're going to have off. It's kind of a nice compromise to try and get some of that time put in a little earlier.
So you're thinking that the 4 snow days could be still virtual school days if like we had to take a snow day. And so there's potential that the student's last day could be June 4th. Is it the 11th?
Well, the 4 snow days would be 8, 9, 10, 11, correct, Darren?
Right.
That's correct.
And then the 7th would all depend on, we'd have to look at each group to see if each group had enough.
Right.
And that will also, I mean, if you have a water main break somewhere and you have to close a building, or you don't have heat somewhere and you have to close a building, those buildings will be impacted by this. They would have to go to school on some days to make up time because we're that close.
Well, they could do remote too.
Potentially could do remote.
To help save.
Oh, that's true. I haven't, yeah. I mean, you don't have heat, then you do remote those couple days.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So we have a little bit of flexibility.
No, we're just in that, we're trying to help, try and figure some of this stuff out. I know it's a mess.
Yeah.
So if things go well, we could very likely have our last contract day land in that second week of June.
Correct.
And I mean, if I'm hearing right, I understand that the concern is an intrusion into a summer that normally are days that are not contract days. So trying to move that up as much as possible and then make sure we have adequate breaks.
Well, it's also assuming that the next school year would start in a more traditional fashion of if we end, that second week of June of actually having a couple weeks off.
Before, yeah. Right, because you won't have that then delayed start,
Correct.
most likely, right. So April 2nd.
So you guys wouldn't want to consider shifting the spring break at all to try to make it the end of third quarter? I guess it would have to go even more so.
like you said, 3 weeks, which would be into April.
I have no data either, but I would anticipate families having some concerns about spring break at the end of April. I don't know.
It's tough. We don't even know what travel might even be possible at that
Right.
point in time. You know, it's like, we know, I mean, I think we know based on my guess, I'm just guessing, based on past years, would be that if travel is possible, we would get a lot of feedback from the community about moving that traditional protected time or whatever for vacations. If vacations aren't possible, I could see a large part of the community saying, well, having a more dispersed or appropriately dispersed break in the school year makes sense. So it's just guesswork.
I think the other really large kickback that I think we could get is the alignment with universities. We
right.
try to align with universities. It doesn't always work that way, but if you have older kids in college and high school kids and you're taking a trip, you want them to.
Well, and my thought process too is if it's moved back, there might be a possibility that you actually get to take a vacation. I don't know. You know, it's just one of
'Cause
those,
We're in better shape with the.
yeah. You know, a couple weeks from March to April. Oh, I take and April, I might actually have some decent weather.
Well, okay, so if we look at every single week and see, like, I would just be interested in seeing, like, what are the implications of pushing it back to the next week or the next week or the next week, and knowing that one implication every time is going to be that we might not be, we are going to be moving further away from when we traditionally have it scheduled.
Wouldn't it typically be with that April 9th being the end of the third quarter, right? Wouldn't spring break typically be then April 12th through the 16th?
Correct.
But you'd have to move it up 1 week because we'd have kids the week of the 15th then. So those 5
Right.
days would count in third quarter. So would we be talking about the week of April 5th?
Gotcha. So April 2nd would move basically to April 5th, and then 6, 7, and 8 would be spring break, is what we're saying.
And then we could count the 5th and the 6th, you know,
Or the
as
5th, yeah.
Because the 6th could be the work day, although we don't count, do we count work days?
Workday doesn't give us anything. It's
Right.
it's just a contract day. So, I mean, you could even leave it on the 9th. You could
Yeah.
go and then put the 2nd as that flex, whatever that is.
yeah.
And then flex conference.
So we wouldn't have
What-
school on the 2nd in any event.
We would.
We would have school?
We'd put school back in on the 2nd.
That's Good Friday.
right.
Okay.
And then we would not have school on Monday through Friday of the next week, is what I hear them saying. Yes?
That,
Yeah.
through 9.
So what if, I mean,
I need a
So would the
visual.
9th right now is a work day, would that?
Through
remain
9th.
okay?
say that again?
April 9th?
It would still be a remote work day. That's going to be the problem, is that for teachers that do one in their rooms, they're not going to be able to be in their rooms. It would have to be a remote work day. I don't know what that would look like for some people.
What would that look like?
So how about, okay, so if we're thinking moving it to are we thinking March 29th through April 2nd, right?
First of all, I want
No.
to say, I want to be clear here. I know our superintendent feels pretty strongly about, I think he has concern about moving spring break from a family perspective. So I think what I would like to do is not abandon this, but create version A and version B.
Yeah.
And then, obviously, we would need to visit with the ELT and discussion about, and maybe take 2 to the board. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but I would want to have some conversation with the ELT before we made that decision. But I'm not opposed to drafting one so that you have 2 laid out in front of you for options.
I think that's good. I just know that if it's where it stands now, I can see a lot of personal days coming up in that stretch.
We could make the April 2nd the teacher workday. And then Monday and Tuesday, the 5th and 6th, could be the remaining flex day or for PD and the flex day for teacher
We can't take
contract.
the PD day out of the back because we're counting it for senior minutes and we need it on the last day. I can't move that one.
Gotcha.
That's correct.
So then maybe the next step is we ask Darren to create a B.
Yes.
And we can share in ELT and share with our board that this is an option, that this is an option that addresses concerns about a very long stretch of weeks with no break for our staff or our students. And then the other option keeps spring break where families anticipate it to be.
So the only thing we are, I hear you are okay with the rest of the calendar, but you would recommend moving spring break to that April 5th through the 9th and moving the 2nd into that week as well.
We could, or the second could be the teacher workday. So then that would really only give us that would really only give us one more day, because it's like taking the flex day and putting it into spring break, so that would move the.
I really
the
like
last.
that option because I do think as a teacher, I probably would want to be in my classroom. I mean, if I'm going to do a new bulletin board, or if I'm going to rearrange my seating, or different stations.
Catalog library books.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, yeah.
Yeah, having the option
librarian's
to
a
be
great
in your classroom
example.
during your workday.
Yeah.
Give that.
I
give
just
that
say
to me
that
one
because
more
our
time.
librarian just
So
walked
April
in.
2nd would be the work day?
And then April 5th could be the parent-teacher
Flex day.
flex day instead of the 9th.
And then the rest of the week would be spring break.
Let me see here.
Okay.
All right, we'll work on a version and.
Sounds good.
Thanks for your input, and thanks to Jill for getting back to us so quickly. It was
And
very
Darren,
busy
thank you
couple
for
days.
Yeah, thank you.
adjusting even late last night.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's crazy.
So, guys, in terms of just wrapping up and clarifying what I've heard, it sounds like you've just now got sort of a version A, which was sort of the primary or main version, and then you've just created kind of an alternative or a possible version B. And this is for the board to consider next week. Is that correct?
Yes, and we will ensure that the board understands the rationale and the benefits of B and the input that we received from NEA on how that helps our professional employees.
Okay. Is there anything else on calendar, or do we want to go ahead and move to COVID update if Michelle's ready to go with that?
I did have one question I just noticed. So the new teachers are still reporting on the 3rd?
Yeah, that's the plan.
Good, all right.
The idea there.
Yeah, go ahead, I was gonna.
And it'll be remote as
Yeah.
well. Well, they'll be in their buildings, their home buildings, and then a lot of it will be streamed to those buildings.
Okay. No, that makes sense.
The thinking was, one of the biggest concerns always with New Teacher Academy is we throw all this stuff at them and then we're like, oh, and now go to work with the rest of your peers. And it's just not a lot of processing time. So we were just thinking it gives that processing time
Right.
that's not always, so it's an opportunity we're going
No, I think
to
it's
take
good.
advantage of.
Yeah, I think that's
I
great.
think, the only, like, under that, it would almost be nice to just kind of, instead of having 3 straight, just kind of pull them out a little bit to give a little extra processing time between them. But, I think it's good to have it where it is.
And I think that we have a lot of people, teachers, instructional coaches that support New Teacher Academy, and they already had it on their calendars.
Yeah.
And so,
And that would allow them to get their pay in August too.
yeah,
Correct.
yes.
Correct. No, that's good.
And their benefits will be fine as well.
Good. And now the
Other
fun one.
calendar thoughts, questions, concerns?
I lost connection, so I'll
Yeah, I
be
did
back in a
too.
minute.
It's interesting how my Mac will, but my iPad.
They don't behave the same. Stephanie, I attended a meeting, law update with our school, our state school board association, and someone with your organization gave a really good presentation. I can't remember his name now. Can she even hear me?
Was it in
Oh.
Was it in Kansas?
Yeah.
Was it John Rasmussen?
Yeah.
Yeah, he does sort of Wichita and everything south and west of that. So yeah, good guy.
He did a good job, and everything that you've presented to us was, aligned exactly with what he said, so,
We're pretty consistent.
yeah.
Okay, there's Michelle. Okay. Okay, what I was saying is there any last thing at this point on thoughts on calendar, even beyond spring break, or was there anything else people needed to look at, a pause to take on calendar?
We want to make sure we count the teacher days as well, to make sure it's, because now I'm thinking with putting a parent-teacher flex day into spring break,
We'll have to pull one off.
Yeah.
We'd have to remove it, and then everything should shift up like a day.
Yeah, we'll count, we always count that.
Right.
So we'll figure out
Yep.
how to, and we'll have you guys check our counting
Sure.
too, just because it's,
It's always helpful.
it's crazy,
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool.
Okay,
I'm sure this next one will be quick.
standing COVID update.
did you guys watch?
So
the
many
board
times I say, Michelle, I'm kicking it to you. But Michelle, I'm kicking it to you.
Did you guys watch the board meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
The whole thing?
I'll be honest, I tapped out after IT,
I was
and it
watching
was basically done, yeah.
the numbers on it, and it was like, many people watched. I thought that was great. And then just 9 o'clock hit, they start dropping.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So you have the best update I can give in that hour and a half last night. So or I guess really 4 hours. What questions do you all have for us at this point?
I mean, does everyone understand the basic options that students are going to have? I guess as a starting point, the bi-semester option.
Yeah, I mean, if you choose like you said, option 1, which is in person, there are 3 ways that could look. And then the option 2 is just completely online for the entire semester. You would never, ever step foot in a building for the student.
I think there could be a few exceptions for potentially stepping in a building. You might take one course there if band, I'm just going to say that. I think if we can make the master schedule work, I mean, we're going to have to see how many we have and what that looks like. And I think there could also be a few exceptions for French 4, let's say, or some really unique elective course and trying to meet kids' needs. So I think those, I'm not going to say it's just boom, boom. And we're going to try to work with kids to make sure that we can meet graduation requirements, especially, I mean, if I'm a senior and I need Spanish 5 and we don't have enough to offer it in remote, then we might, and that's why, I don't know if you heard it the one time when I said most teachers will teach in either option A, 1 or 2. But you could have a situation where if you're teaching 6 of 7, you might teach 5 at Shawnee Mission North, but you could, in your classroom, 5th hour, teach a remote course if we indeed needed it for whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's typically going to be those singletons. And for those of you that are high school teachers, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So if we're like teaching a hybrid model, half the kids the first 2 days, half the kids the next 2 days, how that works. Are we also monitoring the kids at home as well? I mean, they can, like you were saying, they could watch us do our lesson.
They
right?
could.
But they really wouldn't be able to interact with us.
I
'cause
don't
we'd be
think you
in-
have to do that either.
Okay.
I know
They wanted to hear like an example, I think. last
yeah,
time.
and I think that was just an example. I mean, I as a teacher might probably try to do that as a flip, or I might flip the instruction and give it to them at home. It really kind of depends as a teacher if you want to keep everybody together or if you want to have 2 lessons that you would flip each day. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I think that comes down to the art of you as a teacher, I think. But I think there are a lot of options. I think you have a lot of options in that particular. Here's the caveat. For remote to count, kids have to have face-to-face contact every day with at least one teacher.
Okay.
So if you look at the sample schedule that we put in there, we talked a lot about having maybe building in, and this is something buildings are going to work out. We're not dictating this by any means, and you guys are going to be better at this than we are. But just one idea is we were thinking through a master schedule, what that might look like is that seminar is scheduled for 20 minutes every day, so that as a seminar teacher, I'm responsible for these 25 kids, and so their remote day from 8 to 8:30, I'm going to be on WebEx with those, and that counts as our FaceTime through the instruction aspect of it. But somehow, some way, a teacher that the kid has, or an adult that the kid works with on a regular basis, must have FaceTime every single day.
And them watching our lesson as it's being done live would count? Or I have to actually speak to the kid? I mean, I guess I would be speaking to
No,
them.
they would, that's right, that would count.
Okay.
That is actually, I mean, that's direct instruction.
Right.
I'm listening to you.
They may not be able to ask me a question like during it, because I also have class of, in-person kids.
They might not, but you might have Michael, who's very responsible, monitoring a chat box that says, here's the question for
Oh, you mean
people that
a
are
student
watching.
in the room?
Yeah,
Okay.
great. I'm just
Yeah, I think the
thinking.
big concern is
Same thing that just popped in my head.
teachers feeling like, how am I going to monitor my kids in class and all the kids that are online too at the same time? And I don't think that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't think that was an expectation. Or
I
is
think,
it?
no, I think that's a choice that you can make as a teacher.
Okay. And you're saying, like but this is all for like middle high school, but secondary, you could choose to keep all your students together, the ones in person and the ones that are at home, meaning teach the whole same lesson each day, and then, or like you said, you could do, the kids at home are doing something else compared to what the kids in the room are doing in flop, or,
Right.
But those kids at home each time would need to, like you said, have face-to-face interaction every day, or every day that they're virtual.
At home.
Yes.
Does it have like a time amount on that, or they just, okay,
I don't think, I'd have to go back and look, but I don't think there was a time restriction on there.
okay.
There was
And so
something
one
else
idea
you
was, like you said, having the seminar.
The other thing
each
that
day.
could happen is if your kids are working on a project, let's say, and it's, I mean, all hands on and kids
Sure.
are working and you have, let's say 12 to 15, probably less than that, probably 12, or I guess it could be up to 15 in those rare times that we have 60 or 30. But, so if they're working on a project, you could indeed WebEx with the other 12 at that time also. I mean,
Right.
it's like we're all first-year teachers again, right? I mean, we're
Yeah.
going to have to figure some of it out and what works for us in our classrooms.
And then I think they were talking about doing block, right? Like hours 1 through 4 one day and 5 through 7. What about for like halftime teachers? Would it be better to do odd and even? Like, because if they're teaching either the first 4 hours of the day or the last 4 hours of the day, they would normally teach classes, first, second, third, and fourth would be like their plan. So if they were teaching first, second, and third, they'd actually be teaching like almost a full day if you did classes 1 through 4 on the first day. I just didn't know if you looked, I mean, there's not a whole lot of halftime teachers, but that they are, there are halftime teachers, so.
The idea behind it was for kids and teachers to only have to manage less classes daily.
Yes.
Right?
And I like that, yeah.
And I would say if our high schools could come to an agreement on what the schedule is, that would be fine.
Yeah, okay,
But I do think our high schools need to come to agreement on what that is.
right. So they're all the
Because
same.
if I have to, yes, if there's any crossover, the schedules are going to need to look the same.
Okay. Do you have a way of determining who's going to be an online teacher?
We're still working on that right now. We have a couple of different ideas that we're kind of talking through right now, but no, I don't think we have that procedurally.
I think the concern that I've heard is if I sign up to do that, will I lose my current teaching position, say the next year? And so that's a concern.
Okay, that's good to know.
Because like say you're like a librarian at the elementary and you are high risk and you'd like to be part of the, virtual school, the online school. So then the next year, could you still go back to your same building as a librarian or not? Or what, I'm throwing that one out there because it's a single position at a school.
Well, I think that, it applies at grade school too. If I'm a 5th grade teacher at Broken Arrow or whatever, and I do virtual, and then the next year I'm not there,
And we know that you could move from, building to building depending on where, the positions are needed. I was at North and then was at Antioch and then Hawker, and so.
We've had some discussions. We okay with, and as
If
long as
you
you
are.
understand that this is just discussions.
Oh, yeah.
And so I would love your feedback, frankly. So given the idea that kids would select a virtual option, or remote option, excuse me, and we would pull those students out of that particular entity, and place them into that virtual program, remote program.
Yeah.
Make sure I get my nomenclature right. So let's say it's Comanche Elementary, and there's 46 kids pulled out of that pulled out of that entity and put into the remote entity. So then that principal would have those kids removed. They would go through the same staffing model that Dr. Sig has traditionally taken them through. And potentially, there would be less FTE assigned now to Comanche.
Correct.
So then, according to that model, by grade, okay, so now there's X number of 2nd graders, 6th graders, so on and so forth, we may have to adjust FTE. So we go to that principal and say, now you have this amount. So you need to identify this number of FTE to now teach in this virtual program. And then we would go through a selection process, taking into account potentially people's wants, desires, at-riskness, things like that. At the high school level, secondary level, it gets stickier, and I don't have an answer yet. I think a similar idea just around the staffing, just the raw numbers. So West High School, 100 kids, I don't know, get pulled out. We apply the ratio, and now you have a different FTE, and you have to identify, who is going to be now teaching this virtual model. We'd have to work with the virtual principal and identifying, okay, what are the course selections that you're getting from the students that are now in your school, in your program, and attempt to make and to fill all of those positions. So those are some initial thoughts.
Yeah.
It's super cumbersome, but I think it's in an attempt to try to eliminate a need to add a ton of FTE to staff a virtual program.
I do think it's fair to say, though, we believe we will have to add staff
Yes,
to make this
just don't-
happen.
I don't think there's any way around having to add staff. I don't think there's any way around having to add staff. I don't think there's any way around having to add staff. I don't think there's any way around having to add staff. I don't think there's any way around having to add staff. I don't think there's any way around having to add staff. I don't think there's any way around having to add staff. I don't think there's any way around having to add staff. I don't think there's any way around having to add staff. I don't think there's any way around having to add staff. I don't think there's any way around having to add staff. I don't think there's any way around having to add staff. I don't think there's any way around having to add staff. I don't think there's any way around having to add staff. I don't think there's any way around having to add staff. I don't think there's any way around having to add staff. I don't think there's any way around having to add staff. I don't think there's any way around having to add staff. I don't think there's any way around having to add staff. I
because it's just not going to balance perfect.
Yeah.
I actually think, Michael, that it balances maybe better at the secondary level. The numbers would indicate, the early numbers would indicate that we would, again, this is all a prediction based on preference survey, about 100 kids per grade level. So at a Shawnee Mission, I'll use West this time, that's 400 kids coming out of there. So.
I like your comment about the singletons, because that's, of course, I'm a high school, that's mindset, and trying to get those kids those singletons, and allowing that option for whomever to teach a little bit of a blend so that we can get those kids all of their needs. But that's the need for that remote principal, and basically running a whole new master schedule for them. And
every building's
Yeah.
going to have to run a whole
Yeah.
new master schedule, and so
Well, I think
absolutely.
secondary, it's a little easier to, we're dropping this, but you can teach, 6th and 7th hour virtually and stay where you're at. Whereas elementary, it's, you
And some
can't.
people might want to do that. That might be appealing to some teachers
Right.
to.
I think our question was, or the concerns we heard was more like, once we go back to normal, would you just go back in the pool, or would you be able to, like Jay said, if I'm a 5th grade teacher, would I go back to 5th grade or go back to the building I was at pre-COVID, or would I just be in the pool of elementary teachers?
Here's how I would answer that. We always take preference forms. If your position goes away for let's say remote goes away, preference form, I don't see any way, I'm just going to be honest, that we could guarantee you to go back to 6th grade at Brookridge. I just don't know how you guarantee that. I also wonder, this keeps me up at night, will remote go away? There are going to be some families that are choosing remote, not because of COVID, because they like it for their family, for different reasons. I'm a professional gymnast, and I'm in the gym numerous hours a day. That might be a better learning option for,
David did a.
I'm not, David. There was a day when I could do a back handspring, but you would not want to see that now. But I just wonder if,
That makes sense.
Well,
I don't know that any of us knows what it looks like in the future.
I agree. I just think, it's kind of one of those things of like best practice of if there's the option of somebody going back to where they were, that would be our first choice, going back.
I would tell you that would be my first choice as well, but I agree with Michelle. There's just, we would be unable to provide that guarantee on the front end.
Yeah.
But we would still maintain our preference of
Absolutely.
you fill
Yeah.
out your number one choice, your number one feeder
Yep.
pattern.
And someone may, after they leave, might have a different preference, so.
That's correct.
But yeah, that preference form is utilized every time.
Do you guys have a day when the parents will have to make their final choice? Okay.
So I can't tell you exactly what that is yet. We finalized the survey late last night, and then I got it to Dr. Fulton, and he actually sent me back his edits this morning. So we'll be getting that survey done pretty quickly. We've got to get new enrollments taken care of before we can put the survey out, because new enrollments, kindergarten, new to the district, can't access Skyward yet. And so we've got to get that fixed before we can roll the survey out. So we're hoping by maybe Wednesday having the survey out, and then probably a week. So I don't know, August 3rd, 4th, 5th, somewhere in there is going to be a final. And I know, that's a month away from when we start school, and people are like, I don't know what the numbers are, but we have to staff this plan accordingly. And so it will be roughly that week, somewhere in there, 3, 4, 5, I think.
You mentioned last night at the board meeting about staff members. You gave an idea for staff members who have their own kids in their own building. What about those staff members who might live in Blue Valley, Olathe, have elementary, middle school kids. You got a first grader at home, you live in Blue Valley, they're going hybrid there, you really can't do that. So is there going to be some leeway to allow those parents and those teachers to bring their kids into the district?
Right now,
this?
I'm just going to be honest, we do not have a great plan for that right now. And we do not believe that we can manage those numbers efficiently. I know that's not the answer that people are looking for, but we're not going to take on something that we can't manage. And right now, we don't believe we can manage that. And we're hopeful we can manage our current teachers. I mean, we said that last night. That is not solid yet, but we are working on a plan. And it's going to be very costly for the district to do that, but we are committed to still continuing to look at it and see what we can come up with.
There is, and I don't know how reassuring this is, but, and stop me, anybody if I'm stating this incorrectly, but there should be some alignment with other Johnson County districts, given that I believe all of our plans will look at gating data or gating recommendations from the Johnson County Health Department. So I'm hopeful that that as we go into different phases, those phases would look the same as our neighboring school districts. I can't guarantee that, and I also, as a parent, planning is so important, and be able to know when you have childcare. And so there should be a lot of advance notice, right? Like, we should know at a minimum 14 days in advance that it looks like, given the data, we will be approaching yellow and moving to hybrid as of this date. So people who have children of childcare age can plan.
I also want to be really upfront about this next part too. And I don't know what it looks like, but I don't want it to come back as a surprise later. Teaching remote doesn't necessarily mean teaching at home. Always.
So you're saying that the expectation if you're teaching the remote group of kids is that you could be in your classroom and remotely connecting with them from your classroom?
Correct. You would have access to resources, a reliable internet.
So it's not like April of last year where
Well, we had a stay-at-home order.
building was shut down.
That's right. So the buildings will be open unless there's a stay-at-home order or something that the health department tells us it's not safe to work, okay? But if it is safe to work, and from a safety standpoint, I'm in my own classroom, not necessarily intermingling with other people. I do think we would hope that PLCs would have some time, and grade level teams, to take the burden off of one person, that grade level teams would have time, and maybe even do some co-teaching and take some of that so that we're working smarter, not harder idea. But there is going to be, in some instances, I guess I want to say it the other way. Remote teaching doesn't necessarily mean working at home, always.
No more shower whiteboards.
Do you guys have kind of a plan for what Fridays would look like? Is that what the idea is? Is that a hybrid would be Monday, Tuesday one group and Wednesday, Thursday the next?
Those are going to be building decisions.
Building decisions, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what are
And
its
now,
second
I say that, obviously, we're going to have some coordination if we want transportation, which we anticipate we'll be using transportation on Fridays somewhat. It might not be a full route, but,
Like the late bus.
It could be, or it could just be special routes based on buildings. So it can't be, it's not going to be able to be loose. It'll have to be fairly tight from a food service standpoint, how many kids are going to be there and how many, how many buses are running. But I think there's a lot of opportunity on Fridays for especially those hands-on kids, hands-on classes, kids that need a lot of additional academic support, especially, I don't think any of us know what the loss is from fourth quarter yet. And so it gives us an opportunity to really give special assistance to kids that need it on Friday. Whether I'm below grade level, on grade level, or above.
I think some people asked if you were a remote teacher, would your internet be reimbursed? But I think you were talking about how being remote could mean that you were doing that in your classroom so that you had reliable
Correct.
internet access. Okay.
Is there a set plan yet for September 8th? Like, do we know, are we planning on being in the buildings if we can be?
If I had to answer that today, we would be remote. That's the best answer I can give you until we start seeing numbers go down. Dr. Fulton said that live last night. I think it's fair to repeat it again.
Yeah.
Right now, our numbers would indicate we would be remote.
And if that was the case, is there a plan for distribution of new iPads for elementary somehow?
Yeah, so here's what I can tell you about iPads. But I might need to look at my notes because I don't want to mess up these dates. So elementary principals were told yesterday that August the 3rd through the 14th, student iPads will not be able to connect to the internet. They're going to be sitting at their homes and they are not going to be able to connect to the internet. Communications team's working on communicating that with parents so that parents know. The kids could still use their iPad if it's not for the internet. Okay, so there are some things you can do on an iPad that don't require the internet, but the internet will not connect for that 2-week period. On August 14th, all new iPads for staff and students will be available in each building, and then beginning August 17th, principals will be building schedules to do an iPad exchange for kids and for staff. That could be a car drive-by where the Dirks kids drive through, we take the old and we hand the new. Same, and then staff as well. For secondary, it looks like this. Student MacBooks, incoming 7th graders and all new student MacBooks will be available for distribution. They're going to be available in buildings on August 4th, but due to Skyward and scheduling, we won't be able to distribute them that quickly because of schedules, likely, because we're going to have to redo a master schedule. So, but the new student MacBooks will be in buildings and ready sometime after August the 4th. For staff iPads, new iPads for staff, both certified and classified, will be available in each building on August 14th. And then again, after the 17th, principals can work on getting that iPad exchange for staff as needed.
I know this is something we talked about in our building with the students getting new iPads, staff having an opportunity to make sure they're set up. You know, if we're going to be remote, is that something staff are going to be able to do logistically?
Like, I'm thinking in that case, like kindergarten and first graders loading apps, is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, even like my kids didn't have WebEx installed on their iPads, and so that was a big process. And so, you know, putting hands on each kid's iPad to make sure all the things they need are.
You can push from your
Part of the
teachers.
problem last time is we couldn't push unless internet was on, and so I
Yeah.
don't know I don't want to, I can't get into those weeds, honestly, but what I can tell you is I'll write it down and ask the question.
Okay, no, I know that's a logistical, bigger picture.
I also think with those additional days for staff, there will be support staff in buildings that do that, depending on the building, whether it's instructional coach, sometimes it's a librarian, sometimes it's an innovation specialist. So I know those support staff will be working on that as well.
Will you still have specialists that go from building to building, or will they be assigned one?
We will have some. We've
Okay.
tried to minimize that as much as we can, but there will still be some traveling.
Okay. I think if we get so many.
I know.
Oh, I know.
Well, I'm sure you get tons too.
The questions are helpful though, because
They
if
are,
it's
and
something that we haven't developed an answer to,
If we haven't thought about it, it definitely helps. I appreciate the questions.
For sure.
I know there's around supplementals, you know, if, like in the spring, you know, the season just got terminated. And those supplementals were honored, and I think the same question is current. You know, if football or whatever isn't allowed to happen, I think, you know, honoring those contracts the same way is good.
Yeah, so Russ and I had a meeting yesterday about pay and benefits and supplementals and all those different things, and so that came up. As you may know, we're processing those supplementals right now, and they're still on schedule to get paid out on time. What the date was, August 3rd, I think, is when we would have to push all of those supplementals up to our business software to get them paid on time for the Rule 10 coaches. So, yeah, the discussion was we need to wait and see what happens with sports and activities. And
do we know when Keisha will?
Mr. Kramer indicated maybe Tuesday, I think is what he said last night.
I don't even know what that might look like. I don't even want to guess, because I don't have any information. I have no insight there.
I got nothing.
To be completely honest, I'm on the Keisha board and I don't know. So
Yeah.
we haven't been having, the executive board is having discussions, but the board has not had any discussions around that, other than what I'm reading.
Well, it could be a lot of lawyer discussion too.
I'm sure it is.
A lot of liability fashion.
When is our next meeting, guys? I'm just we're gonna have more questions. I thought last time I looked that I thought that it was timed well to potentially answer any more questions in this, format before school starts, but I can't remember now.
It's the
The third
20th.
Thursday.
Oh, it's not till the 20th?
Mhm. We had talked about if needed, we could do a virtual
Yeah.
to
I would be
discuss
glad
those.
to do that, just to give an update.
Yeah.
And I'd rather field the questions here than them blow up.
Oh, yeah.
This is a much better option than it slapping one of us, when we don't know it's coming.
Yeah, we could absolutely do that.
Wouldn't mind getting some feedback on the subs. I don't know if you heard that conversation at all. We had a really productive meeting with Kelly a couple days ago, and frankly, I was a little surprised at their comment that their pool is looking as strong or stronger than they have in the past, which is, of course, great. And then the safety procedures they're putting into place, we really feel good about the training. We really feel good about. A couple questions I think I would ask is your thoughts around this idea of establishing building subs for each building. After we put pencil to paper, There's some cost concerns there. But I think if you look at the data and base, how many you place in the building by the data, there's some benefit in that. So I don't know if any thoughts or any concerns about that. And then establishing that pool of remote subs, where they would be trained, where we would work with our IT department, and ensuring that they had the appropriate technologies so that they could access it from their home, or maybe they even come to the school and do it remotely at the school. So
I like the idea of having select subs for, and I don't know if it necessarily has to be, one-to-one for a school, or it could be a small, like these ones are for these couple schools, just so we are kind of minimizing, the
exposure.
exposure,
That's what we're thinking.
and that to me is a great idea of, like trying to, logistically figuring that out is probably a nightmare, but I think it is good if we can't go, straight up one-to-one, but like kind of pool them in
Clusters.
clusters.
Yep. We thought of that too, and we actually did that last year on high need days, Fridays and Mondays, where we had a pool just sitting there ready to go. And we offered that as a suggestion a couple days ago, and their comment was, we can try that, but subs are a little hesitant to join that pool when they don't know exactly where they're going to be put out to. It's much more appealing if they know they're going to Crestview or whatever, for their own personal safety needs and travel and everything else. So we're giving that some thought.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about having to need a remote sub, but if the person teaching remotely is sick and can't meet face-to-face with those
Right.
kids, they're gonna, or, well, not face-to-face, through the screen, then they would need, but that would count if a sub was presenting that, that would still.
Yeah. Yeah, you would still be responsible,
guess
of
it
course,
counts normally.
for the lesson plan and
Right,
preparation, and they would just deliver it.
right.
Yeah.
Well, I think, just having some of those that are available, because you don't know, a long-term position might pop up that needs one of those,
Right.
Right.
you know?
Or a couple weeks even,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. No, I think that's good.
Okay. If you think of anything, let us know.
Yeah.
Did you say, Michael, that you might be able to have a frequently asked question?
Yeah, I'm actually working on it.
Sure, that's what I figured.
It's a growing document.
Yeah.
So,
I bet.
I'm multitasking, but yeah, we're hopeful to get that out next week or so.
Okay.
This should be interesting.
Stephanie, you're muted.
Are you
There we go.
Okay.
there?
Still areas on the status of the COVID work that folks need to explore, talk about, understand better at this point?
I don't know. I think some of us are still processing.
Yeah.
Well, it's 10:10. Does it make sense to do a bio break maybe for 5-10 minutes while you process, come back and see if we continue this conversation? And then if not, I have that you guys want to go into trying to get that red line document done.
Yeah.
Are you feeling like you need a few minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
that'd
could
be
use a
great.
break.
Okay, 10:10. What time do you guys want to be back?
20.
10:20.
Okay, I'll see y'all then.
Hey, Stephanie.
Hey there. So, is everyone back on?
Yep.
Yep.
I know I heard Rachel saying there was something we probably need to contemplate or decide.
Just our trigger point for how we would figure out if we need to meet virtually before the 20th. Or
Okay.
otherwise, we could potentially not be virtual, but I guess,
Could I suggest we schedule something?
But, yeah,
or
Michelle's never
cancel it
gonna
if we
say.
don't need it? Because I'm afraid if it's not on the calendar, it's going to be next to impossible to get on the calendar.
in the vein.
Before we
Sorry, go ahead.
Before we do that, when I sent everyone to break, I think a couple people said they were still processing, and we certainly, sounds like I would be happy to put something on my calendar if you all would like me to be involved in a follow-up meeting virtually or not. But I know some people were still processing. Now that you sort of stretched your legs, coming back, looking at any notes you took on the current COVID report, not like it's your last chance, but is there anything you still want to loop back to on the current COVID questions? Or are we ready to go ahead and have y'all set your virtual follow-up meeting?
I just have one thing, and this might be just an oversight on words, but when we talk about new students and we say like kindergartners, we also mean pre-K as well, like we're still going to have pre-K in buildings?
Absolutely.
Okay.
None of that has changed. So yes, all new students, actually, regardless, it's anyone new enrolling in the district.
Right.
I mean, obviously, that's a lot of pre-K, that's a lot of kinders,
Could be
and that's
anything.
a lot of actually a lot of ninth graders, because kids come from Catholic school. We
Right.
have a large influx of ninth grade. So yeah, but any new student.
Great.
I think, I don't know, maybe we should look at like the 10th, the week of the 10th. Because that gets us, because I know new teacher is going to be swamped.
Can I clarify that your virtual follow-up meeting is to do another check-in on the status of school starting and all that means? Is that what you're thinking you want to do, just in terms of you all having a discussion again?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like a COVID and then concerns and
Okay.
touch base.
Let me know if that is something you do want me to be on, and I'd be happy to open my calendar as well.
That's one thing that I've thought of too, is we talk about the negotiations process. I think everybody on this team expressed an interest in continuing to use a facilitator and that being our default. I think there may be some instances where it's like just a one-point discussion topic where, you know, maybe or maybe even just because of Stephanie's schedule or whatever, that we could discuss whether the team is comfortable with just not having a facilitator for that specific meeting only.
Right. And then, by the way, if you get in the meeting and it opens up more issues than you thought, are there issues that you feel like it's looking like you need to IBB them because they may be contractual? Then you could say, okay, maybe we pause this topic and put it on to a meeting with Stephanie. So you could be flexible with yourselves that way, I think.
I think that would make sense if we're just doing a COVID update, that I think we could handle that on our own. But, you know, if we got to the point where we're like, whoa, we need to pause, that we do need Stephanie, we could just stop the meeting for the day.
Or continue with the update, but put that topic aside or something.
Yeah, and maybe our rule or whatever you want to call it is if one team member says, I'm uncomfortable venturing into this topic or discussion without the facilitator, then that's, you know, it doesn't take a vote or anything. If one person is saying, we need a facilitator for this discussion, then that's what we honor.
I think that would make sense.
Makes sense to me.
So for now, you all do a date that works for you for your COVID follow-up, and then just, I think you guys figured out what to do if some sticky topic comes up in that. You'll just pull me in at another meeting.
Rachel, are you okay if I kind of memorialize what you said, just so that we have it in our
Yeah,
notes?
please
Okay.
do. David, can you facilitate, because it would have to be a public meeting, but I assume you could, well, I don't know if it's you or ACT, but we could set that up virtually just like we do board meetings? Okay.
Did we, sorry, if we did, I missed it. Did we talk about a date?
I said,
You threw one out.
everybody look at the week of the 10th.
I can only do 10 or 11, and I'm limited there.
What's your,
How about, I mean, I think 11 might be better just because we would have one more day of, sometimes on Mondays, we regroup and things change and,
And the boardroom would be set up, so we would still have this set up, and they wouldn't have to completely tear down and set up, so that would be good. But it would have to be Tuesday afternoon for me.
it's fine for me.
what time, Michelle?
I'm open after probably 1:15.
Do you need a break? You want to say 1:30 or 2?
I gave myself a break, so whenever you guys, 1:30 works for me.
1:30 to 2:30 on Tuesday, August 11th?
Let's do 1:30 to 3, just in case.
Okay. Let me do a meeting for everyone in here. The 11th from 1:30 p.m. to 3 o'clock p.m. And I'll send everyone, IDB meeting, COVID update. Okay, I'm gonna send, so do we affirmatively decided location, or do we want to decide the day before?
I'm fine with us tentatively saying that we're gonna meet here. I mean, it's not, Lindsay's the only one.
We'll
that's
have
got
I
a
guess
real
the question
drive.
is, are we comfortable if we meet here if someone wants to go virtual for this particular, like if Lindsay wanted to Zoom in or WebEx in, or if
I'm
someone
cool with
wanted to
that.
WebEx in, if they weren't here?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
I will likely be here anyway from this point
I will
forward,
too.
so
Yeah.
I told Dr. Fulton I'll be here forever if I can wear my tennis shoes. Just kidding.
You need to set
Rachel,
a
you said
hammock
you're
up in
sending
your
out a
office.
calendar invite. Okay,
No,
that's great.
all I need is my tennis shoes. I can go hundreds of miles.
I'm gonna start putting our communications person who does meeting notices on these things because I don't want to forget.
Yep.
Idea.
Set a
And then
group
tell me when you
contact.
guys, let me make sure I'm unmuted.
You're
I am
here,
unmuted.
We can hear you.
So I want to talk a little bit about, it's interesting that, Rachel, you said John gave a presentation about our agency and probably covered mediator role, sort of our ethics and responsibilities around neutrality, not giving legal advice, things like that, being confidential. That's why, you know, generally at the end of a case, our notes go in a shredder. We do that because a couple of reasons. And I know this feels off topic, but it's leading to, you know, the rest of your agenda. So once we are done with mediators with a case, like we don't, we're not allowed to talk specifically about your issues. Sometimes we're really not even to say what clients we're working with, quite frankly, unless it's part of a bigger sort of media wants to report on what's going on. And even then, we keep it general about, we would say something like, we were really happy to work with the parties to come to resolution, right? So we never really talk publicly. We can't, as a federal agency with a commitment to neutrality and confidentiality, none of our stuff could be subpoenaed. That's why if you go to fact finding, you don't get to ask the mediator to come tell the fact finder what happened or anything like that. The other thing that happens is, and we learn it in sequence training, our mediation training 101, is if, 2 months down the road after you've mediated with the parties, whether it be interest-based, whether it be traditional bargaining, if one of the parties or both the parties contact you and say, hey, we have TAs that are conflicting, or we never signed that TA, and maybe the association or the union's notes say one thing, and the employer's notes say another, what do your notes say? Or Commissioner Haynes, don't you remember that we did intend it this way? Because now we're typing our contract, right? Now we're putting the agreement together. So I, as a mediator, am not allowed to provide any recollection that I had. And the reason that we are advised by our agency to shred our notes when a case is done is because our agency doesn't want us to even be tempted to pull up notes to give some clarity, because it could be a perception of not being neutral. If my notes say something the association doesn't like or the employer doesn't like, our agency may start to build a reputation, or rumor gets out that, you know, the mediator sided with. So the reason I'm telling you this is because it's a pretty strict concept in my agency, because it really does protect the whole agency's reputation throughout the community and the country. So as you all move into your redlining your document, I'm trying to think, are there reasons I should stay available and listen in when my role really is to IBB your process for solutions, but you're really just redlining to incorporate your TAs? I don't want anybody to be tempted, or me to be tempted, to jump into any sort of confusion you might have about putting your contract together, because it wouldn't really be part of a mediator's role. So I want to kind of put that out there. I also want to hear your thoughts. If you feel like the redlining is going to be sort of informal and it may be mixed with other things you need facilitation on, I am happy to stay on. But I want you to know that if you get to a point of capturing your TAs in the redline document and you're sort of trying to figure out what was correct, there I will not be able to facilitate our way in. It's why I always encourage you guys to sign and type your TAs at the end of every meeting, because that's where I let go. So I just want to put that out to you.
Okay, thank you. That's good to know, and for us, I think, to all be aware of.
Hey,
Okay.
Rachel, can I make a suggestion about our meetings moving forward, our whatever Thursday? Did we decide Thursdays?
Yeah.
So I was processing this whole idea of us meeting from, I don't know, 4 to 6 or whatever we decided, and I was thinking, well, Jay and Jill are finished it by 3, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
And Lindsay, you're finished by 3, right? No kids after?
Kids leave at 2:45, but we have PLCs till 3:30.
Okay. Well, I was thinking if we could get coverage for John for the last hour, where we could try to start and go 3 to 5. I only say that because everybody's tired. And I want us to be productive, and I don't want us to be feeling like we're not at home with our kids and we're all tired. If we could commit to coverage for John, I guess you would have to be willing to exit out of a PLC once a month for us to do that, but is anybody open to that idea?
I'm a little concerned about coverage for my kids past 5 o'clock, but I would also want to make sure that, you know, you guys feel okay with that, especially you, John.
All the
You'd be
weight
the
is
most
on you, John.
impacted. No, I don't want you to feel like you're
It wouldn't be, I mean, it would
being
literally
pulled
be
away or
what,
stressed at the end of
covering
your
him for like
day.
20 minutes or so, right?
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, for my own kids, I was just going to have somebody ready to go every third Thursday. But, I mean, we're done at, 2:40, so.
Or maybe we start at 3:15, gives you time to at least breathe.
Yeah, I mean, I can't get out of the parking lot till 3.
Yeah. Could you do
Don't wanna run
3:15
over.
once a month?
Yeah, I can make that work.
Okay.
Definitely.
So can we change, whoever put out the
I can
invite,
email,
adjust
I'll
it?
email my assistant who sent out all the calendar things and ask her to adjust that. I think we're going to be happier being done at 5 instead of 6.
And John, I will likely remember to get you coverage, but don't let me forget that. Okay.
Well, it's just my dismissal duty, so anybody from my building who's watching, just make sure who's wanting to cover my dismissal
I'm going to call it
duty.
my first favor to Misty Miles Maiden.
I was just going to speak to the red line. I think, we have done a good job of incorporating things. I think that it's going to my suggestion would be to start and go through and
Page
just
by
look
page.
page by page and go through, and it's going to be a yeah or let's fix this. And I mean, I would say that Stephanie could sign off, and then if we get somewhere that, then we would text her and say, hey, we need some help on this. But I think
Yeah, I will be available for sure. I'm just going to be doing computer work myself here today. So if you do need me, text me. And while it's wonderful that you have counsel on your committee, and I am not a lawyer or legal background, sometimes there are also questions about wording and things like that. It just becomes tempting all around to engage deeper than my role. So.
yeah.
But anyway, so what do other people think about? I think was that Jay that recommended that.
I was just going to confirm, Jay, I agree. I mean, I think we've done all the heavy lifting at this point. I think it's just a matter of combing through it. I don't see there being any surprises, so.
Nope.
And
don't
I
either.
lost connection, so I'm not going to log back on if we're all good with this anyway.
Well, you might have to grab it just to look at the red line internet.
Well, right now I don't have access to it, so
Yeah.
it's down.
Mine,
And anybody have any different thoughts on that? In terms of what I think it was Michael and Jay just shared. I think you guys have been very thorough, and I don't expect you're going to get into confusion on what your intent was, and you have done great at typing your TAs as you achieve them. So I don't suspect you're going to have any trouble. But again, I will have my phone in hand as I'm doing computer work, so if you need me to loop back in, guys, just give me a text or call.
Sounds good.
Stephanie, thank you for your help through this process. I know it's ongoing, so it's, we're going to be a team whose work is not ever really done. We'll just jump into the next year once we finish the year before. But really a sincere thank you for your help back in the spring and your help through this summer. It's been really great working with you and your agency.
Oh my gosh, it's been a pleasure with you all too. Just the utmost compassionate professionals, and it's a pleasure. Thank you. I will talk to you guys in August. Unless I hear from you before then, good luck on your board meeting and your ratification, and have a great school year. I think everyone appreciates teachers and support staff and school district decision makers more than ever. You got a hard road to haul, and we appreciate you. So,
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay.
You guys, oh, got it. Never mind.
Do we want to put it up on the screen or just all look at it on our own or our own computers?
yes.
I'm good on my screen. I don't need it up, but it's up to you guys.
I think what we would be doing is just accepting slash deleting all the comments. So what we have is a red line, non-commented version that can be shared with the board and the association. And then from that, we would just we just accept all the changes from that.
When, the only question I have is if we accept the change, does it?
Takes the red line
It
away.
takes the red line away, so we wouldn't want to accept any changes to the language. I just think that what we want to send to our board and to the association just wouldn't have all those comments in the side.
Would it?
Would it be a good idea to save another draft?
That's what I was just going to, is like, let's create a new,
Just make a copy of it,
yeah,
and then we could PDF this part.
yeah.
and he believes he's counted, so I want you to check that, Jill, if you would, please.
Yeah.
I'll count it too. I'm going to do it in my spreadsheet later, but I will double check it for Darren. And then we also have Kevin Hansford double checking it as well.
Thank you, Dr. Dennis.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Dennis. I don't know if he's watching. I'll text him right now or send him a message.
And is the April 5th of spring break considered the parent-teacher?
It would be the
Flex day.
conference. April 5th would be the flex conference.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
We'd have
So
to
we would need
review
to
our
adjust that.
non-Wednesdays, wouldn't we?
We would need to adjust our blockout schedule. Yes.
Yeah.
We probably need to do that anyway, don't we?
Yeah, we're gonna have to do that no
Yeah.
matter what.
Yeah, we are going to have to do
Yeah.
that. Good point.
I mean, that's all
Let's do
changed.
that on the 10th.
Yeah.
Because then
Okay.
our calendar will be approved and
Yep.
unless we need to do it
Yeah.
before then.
Do our teachers need to know that for plan? Is that like a big planning
They've been
piece?
asking. There's been several people
Okay.
asking. But
I think we have to wait
Yeah.
until the
I'd rather
board
you guys-
decides.
We definitely
Well,
have to
and once
wait
we-
for the board approved calendar.
yeah, once the calendar's approved, you can just say, for right now, it's what's always been, before and after a holiday and PD days and.
What if
you know
we
what I
do
mean?
it and send it out to you all
like
and
that
just do it
idea.
electronically?
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we might on this calendar B have 192 days for returning teachers. But I'll have to, hold on. I'm just counting them up. Oops. But I might be wrong.
Yeah, it's 192.
192 for new teachers. That means that,
No,
For
192 for
returning.
returning.
192 for returning teachers.
And I think it's because we put the parent-teacher conference into spring break. So like, normally
I
it would be
agree.
5 days off, but now that there's a 1 day in the spring break that's, so do you fix that by going back to the beginning?
Because Darren, this is, April 5th is now the flex day.
Correct.
And so spring break would only be 4 days, where in the old calendar it was 5.
Correct. But that fifth day, we don't count anyway.
But for teacher contract,
We don't count the spring break contract for teacher contract either.
But we're taking a day away from spring break,
Right.
and so that is a teacher day.
No.
If it's a flex day, it is.
I got to count.
Okay,
it.
hold on. I think I might be getting 191. Hold on.
Oh,
I got
counted.
191.
I'm
Okay.
getting 191.
I maybe,
Okay.
I miscounted. It's possible.
This is why I have to do it in a spreadsheet. Gets like, starts staring back at you.
This is why I just defer.
Yeah,
to
I got
somebody.
191.
Did you?
191.
Okay.
Okay.
So do you,
No, go ahead.
I know this is quick digestion, but do you guys have a preference? I mean, just looking at these two? I mean, I know we discussed B, but.
Are we, first of all, are we all good with B as it's written? I just want to make sure we don't have any.
I guess
Yeah.
my question with B is, you said you needed the teacher facilitated day, the last day of school for senior minutes.
It's not for the senior, it's so that like, if it's before the senior's last day, then that takes away some of their time because the PED days only count as a half.
Okay.
So if you move it to the end, it makes it so, right?
It
that-
gives us basically 4 hours for seniors, 3.5, something like that.
That
Okay.
makes sense.
And this currently has enforced snow days, and so if those were, either if we didn't take a snow day at all, or if we did and we had them virtual, it could move the student's last day
To the 4th.
to the 4th. Which is closer to some of the other, well, actually, I've only seen one other calendar.
Blue Valley was the
yeah.
3rd.
I don't know that I've seen any others, but.
Well, and this moves teacher's last report day up a day also.
And
Yeah.
probably increases the
And-
chances of being done the second week of June. Or maybe,
Well, they would be finished if they had that flex done anyway.
Great,
but-
great.
And
But moving it back 4 days would for sure put it to the 4th, regardless of any emergencies, where the other one, moving it back 4 days, we could get to like the 7th for students' last day. Just on snow days.
I think it would work out really nice if we had a last day of school as the 4th, but.
Well, and understanding that the day, that Monday of spring break being used as that flex day is just kind of a 1 year.
So let me ask this. Yeah, we would have to have an agreement on this because we'd be violating our agreement.
Oh, yeah.
We would have to have a TA, I guess is the word, or just a memo of understanding probably. Do we want to, in option A, do that same thing?
Oh, to try and get that one
It
day.
gives us one more, every day matters, right? Every day in June matters.
Yeah.
So leaving spring break where it is, but having the 15th be a flex day? Is that what you're saying?
No, I have to think about this for a minute. What I'm saying is it being 4 days of spring break and maybe moving that we can't do that because it doesn't correlate. Never mind. I don't think we can do that.
Well, the second's the flex day.
We could move the flex conference into spring break, but that's awful early for a conference.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
I don't either. I don't think that's kind of kills the spirit or the intent of having it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't do us any good to move the conference day because it's student minutes anyway. The work day is the one that helps us. Okay, so we'll double check them all again, but barring anything crazy, back to Michael's question.
Which was,
Do you have a preference?
I think I would prefer B, option B. I feel like the spring break falls more, like having it be the end of third quarter is helpful with, evening out where breaks happen. Because then it ends up being, like 8 weeks or so, or 9 weeks, instead of 12 without a large break.
It's a long time.
September and October are gonna be interesting, but
I think it'd be helpful too, because I know Linda had a conflict that if she had a little bit of a voice also on this. But it's a difficult balancing act because of, a contract does guarantee those 5 days for spring break, and I don't know. It is what it is. We got to figure out the best way to get it. And I think anything going forward, understand that if we are to use one of those days, in that spring break that it is understood, and I'm just restating something now, is that this is just for this year.
Yeah.
And that,
I would need to have a TA signed before the board approved if we were going to do
correct.
which I think that.
TA, or do we just need an agreement? Because we're not changing language.
Agreement.
I mean, like a memo.
Yeah, I'm comfortable. Actually, we could probably build in language right now that just says, in the event the board approves
Option B.
the calendar, blah, 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 blah. Like
And I just want to be clear, I'm not committing yet that we're taking both options to the board. I have an obligation to take this to ELT to say, here are the recommendations of the team, and we'll go from there. But ultimately, that's what goes on is going to be up to ELT and the superintendent ultimately.
So would it make sense to have you take it to ELT, and if it's something,
I think we have to write it today because this will go live Friday at noon. That's tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow at noon. It would go live in the board docs for Monday night's board meeting. So I think we're going to have to kind of,
I can write language that says, in the event that the calendar is presented to the board for approval, and we can attach this or whatever, that there is an agreement that for this school year only, spring break will be 4 days to allow the first day to be the flex day. And it'll just be
and I would say due to COVID.
Yeah.
I would say why.
Yeah.
We're not just doing this because.
Right.
Do you guys feel like you're in a position, I mean, obviously you've had no abilities. I'm sure you've heard a lot from your members on the calendar specifically, but do you feel comfortable and in a position where you could send an agreement out for ratification that has that kind of language in it? I don't want to put you guys in a spot either where you haven't had, I mean, we're just in a spot where we don't have a ton of time, but is it something like?
Yeah, the main thing that people kept wondering is, how early can we come back in August so that we don't have to have the days late in June? And I kept saying, well, the teachers can't put in 187 days of a contract and be done before the students reach all their hours, right? So it's that balancing act. And so I think if we make sure we let them know, like, we have tried all these different, things so that we can get time at the beginning of the year for PD and getting ready, as well as getting out as, early in June as possible. We could, well, no, I was going to say, with our time frame, I don't think we could survey because you literally have to put something on the board docs tomorrow. So, all the breaks are still in there. All the days are still in there, and
I'd like to have the opportunity to take this to ELT. I think there's considerations both ways. We just can't do it unless, unless we have language that authorizes it in our P&A because of the protected spring break week. So I just, I know you guys are having to think on your feet, but I want to check your comfort level before we write that language in, because you're just, everyone's just going to have to understand that you had to make a decision very quickly based on all the time you've already spent listening. And I think there's going to be a ton of individual opinions on this based on individual schedules and individual personal situations. So it's a tough one. Do you want to wait till we get to the calendar and then you guys can just be running those thoughts? You can start going through the P&A and then.
Yeah, let's give it a second.
Or if you guys want to take a break, I mean, we don't want to do anything that's like caucusing, but if you guys need to take a break, I'm okay with that. I don't want you guys to be put in a.
Oh, it's definitely, but I think, it is one of those, understand people that, we're trying to do.
Jill, is
The
Linda
best thing
available to
across.
talk to via phone? Would you like to call Linda and just ask?
Yeah.
Or have a conversation?
And she's watching.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, she said, just a second ago, she thinks most people would favor the change, because it does allow us to, get out earlier, but also it moves the break so that it's right after third quarter, and doesn't make it like, 12 weeks of, no break.
And it also kind of tries to balance out, because we know lots of teachers have summer jobs. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, my gut is yes. I'm still apprehensive, but it's that comes with the territory.
There, yeah.
Well, the language in the agreement would always give us the ability to do it. It would give us the flexibility so that if following this meeting, you guys have a lot of input that's like, actually, could present a problem for our professional employees in whatever ways, you could communicate that to us, and then that's additional interest from our professional employees that we could share. Probably, my thinking right now is better to have the flexibility to present it and know that we're not going to draw a grievance for a 4-day spring break if B is adopted.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Is everybody ready at this point to just start going through the P&A and,
Did you make a copy of it?
no, I did not.
Okay.
Okay, if everyone's comfortable, I think we can close the meeting and just do the work to finalize our P&A.
Okay.
I think we're
Yes.
Okay.